Howdy everybody! So, you want to learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded, but it seems impossible. Well, I can help with that. My name is Charlie Eggins, and I'm one of the top blindfolded solvers in the world. This is a tutorial designed for complete beginners that already know how to solve a Rubik's Cube without a blindfold on. This tutorial will break it down into 11 small, achievable steps and give you little practice drills throughout to help reinforce your learning. This is the first video in the 4-part series where you learn how to solve the Rubik's Cube blindfolded. In this video, you'll learn the first 3 steps, so by the end, you'll be able to turn a scrambled cube into a string of letters. This will take some time and effort, but I am confident that if you follow along and take your time to learn with this tutorial, you'll be able to solve a Rubik's Cube with a blindfold on. And with that, it's time to get into it. There are 2 main parts to solving the Rubik's Cube blindfolded: memorization and execution. We will first learn the steps needed to memorize the cube. The first thing we need to do is to know and remember a lettering scheme that assigns a letter to each position of the cube, so we can refer to them more easily. We learn the lettering scheme and do our solving in a particular orientation for the cube, with the white center on the top and the green center on the front, like this. And so before doing anything, we need to remember to put the white center on the top and the green on the front. Some blindfolded solvers choose to use different orientations for their solving, but this tutorial will teach using white on the top and green on the front. And we will be using a lettering scheme called SPEFs, which goes alphabetically around the cube, going to each face in a certain order that we will need to memorize and become very familiar with. And the 2 types of pieces on the cube, edges and corners, have separate lettering schemes, so one for edges and one for corners. So here is the lettering scheme for edges. We start on the top back here with A, and then it goes to here, which is B, and then C, and then D. So it goes around clockwise. So A, B, C, D. And then we go onto the left side here, and we again start at the top with E, F, G, and H. And then we go onto the front, and starting at the top again, I, J, K, L. And then we go onto the right side, and again starting up at the top, so M, N, O, and P. And then we go onto the back, and it starts up the top again, so Q, R, S, and T. And then finally on the bottom, we start at the front here, so U, V, W, X. And so that was the lettering scheme for edges. And we're also going to have to learn the lettering scheme for corners. And so again, it starts at the top and it starts back here and it goes around clockwise, just like for edges. So it goes A, then B, then C, then D. And then just like with edges, we go onto the left and we start back up here. So E, F, G, H. And then again, just like edges, we go to the front. So I, J, K, and L. And then the right, M, N, O, P. And then the back, Q, R, S, T. So it's the same order as edges. And then on the bottom here, so U, V, W, X. So we go around on the top, then the left, then the front, then the right, then the back, and then the bottom, and we go around alphabetically. So that is the SPEFs lettering scheme for edges and corners. Our goal with this, before we move on to the next step, is to get really familiar with this lettering scheme. You want to be able to point to any position on the cube and be able to say the associated letter very quickly. So this edge is J, and this corner back here, this corner is R, and this corner is H. So being able to know what letter a piece is as quickly as possible. And one way to get familiar with this quite quickly is to remember the first letter on each of the faces. So the first letter on the top face you can remember is A, and the first letter on the left face is E, and this is for both edges and corners, it's going to be the same. And on the front, the first letter is I, and then on the right side, the first letter is M, on the back, the first letter is Q, and on the bottom, the first letter is U. And this way, you don't have to go through the whole alphabet every time. You can instead just go from the first letter on the face, which is much quicker and will allow you to get more comfortable with the lettering scheme much faster. So as an example, if I have here, instead of going through the whole alphabet like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and whatever else, I can just remember that the first letter on the right face is M. And so I can just go from M, N, O, and find that this one is going to be P, and that's much easier. Another example, let's say that we have this edge back here, right here, then instead of going A, B, C, D, F, G, H, whatever, I can just remember that the first edge on the back face here is Q here. And so then I go around Q and then R. So I can know that this edge is R. And that's much, much easier and faster. Okay, so now to get more familiar with this, I'm going to give you a little bit of practice. I'm going to point to a position on the cube and give you a few seconds to say the letter associated with that position. I'll start off slow to see if you can say it before I do. And if you want a little bit more time, then you can pause the video, or once you've got the hang of it, you can skip to here. So first, we'll be practicing some of the edges. So the first one is here. Try and tell me what letter that is. Alright, good job. It was D, because you go around the first on the top face is A, and you go A, B, C, then D. So that edge is D. Now for the second try, it is going to be this one back here. So see if you can tell me what letter it is. Alright, good job. So if you said W, you were correct, because we can remember that on the bottom face, the first letter is U, and so we go around U, V, W right here. So this edge is W. Now onto another practice. This time it is this edge. What letter is that? If you said G, then good job, because the first letter on the left face is E. So I go around E, F, and then G. So yeah, this edge is G. And now our last practice for edges is going to be here. See if you can tell me what letter this edge is. If you said P, then good job, because remember the first letter on the right face is M, and we go around M, N, O, and P. Alright, now we will practice the lettering scheme for corners. So starting off with, can you tell me what letter this corner is? And the correct answer was C, because the first letter on the top face is A, and it goes around A, B, then C. Alright, now the next practice is going to be here. Can you tell me what letter this corner is? If you said L, then good job, because on the front face, the first letter is I, and so it goes I, J, K, then L. So if you said L, then good job. Now onto the next one. It's going to be right here. Can you tell me what letter this corner is here? If you said V, then good job, because on the bottom, it goes around, it starts off with U on the bottom, and then U, V, so V. And now, our last practice for corners is going to be right here. Can you tell me what letter this corner back here is? Now, if you said T, then good job, because on the back, the first letter is Q, and it goes around Q, R, S, T. So if you said T, then good job. Okay, so now that you are familiar with the lettering scheme, we are going to learn how to use it to turn a scrambled cube into a group of letters to remember. Well, now the second step is going to be tracing edges. Tracing is where you start working your way around the cube piece by piece, planning out how to get things back to their solved locations. To understand how this sort of works, consider this situation. In my family, consisting of dad, mum, my brother, my sister, and me, we have positions that we sit in when we go in the car. My dad usually sits in the driver's seat, but imagine if he decided to be a smarty pants and sat himself over in the passenger seat that my little brother normally sits in. Then everything is mucked up from there. My little brother sat in my seat, I sat in mum's seat, and she sat in my little sister's seat. And so when my little sister wanders up to the car at the end, she realizes that this could be dangerous, because she has to sit in the driver's seat, but she doesn't know how to drive. It's all mucked up, right? So how could we fix it? Well, we are going to change everyone to the right position by swapping people with the driver's seat. Obviously, we wouldn't necessarily do this in real life, but for our analogy, that's the way we will solve it now, because it's a little bit like how we solve Rubik's Cube blindfolded too. So my sister, who's in the driver's seat, says to my mum, "Hey, you're in my seat," and so they swap. But now my mum is in the driver's seat, and she doesn't want to drive. So she says to me, "Hey, you're in my seat," and we swap. I don't know how to drive, but I do know that my brother is in my seat, and so we swap. And my brother wants to go back to his seat as well, which currently has my dad sitting in it. So they swap. And then finally, everybody is sitting in the right seats. What we have done here is the equivalent of the way that a blindfolded solver solves the cube, by doing a series of swaps until everything is back in its correct position. We call the planning of this series of swaps tracing. So let me show you what that analogy looks like, but actually when solving a Rubik's Cube. Let's say we have this case. And what we're going to do is we're going to say that this piece right here, so on the top and on the right side right here, is going to be the driver's seat. And so what we're going to do is we're going to perform swaps with our driver's seat and other places on the cube in order to solve the pieces one at a time, just like how the person in the driver's seat swapped to where they need to go. So we can look at this piece and see that it, with the orange and white, needs to go to here with orange and white. And so we're going to swap. So we're going to swap that piece with where it needed to go, and that solved that piece. And then we look at the piece that's now in our driver's seat, or this piece here, and that has green and orange on it. So it needs to go here at green and orange. And so we're going to swap it with that place. Whoa, Charlie, what moves did you just do? Well, I did some swapping algorithms that we will learn in a later step, but for now, you just need to know that it swapped those pieces, and we can worry about the actual moves to do in a later step. And would you look at that? By doing 2 swaps, we solved some pieces, and this is how blindfolded solving works. And tracing is just the planning of the series of swaps that we are going to do to solve the cube. And tracing happens in 2 parts, tracing the edge pieces and tracing the corner pieces. And the step that we are looking at for now is how to trace the edges. Your starting position on the cube is called your buffer, and for edges that's right here, but more specifically this top sticker up here. And that is like the driver's seat in our analogy. And so to begin with, you look at what piece is in the buffer, and it tells you where to trace to next. So this one, it has green on the top and orange on the side, and so it needs to go to here. So that's where I'm going to trace to. And once you find it, take note of the letter assigned to that location that we learned in the previous step. So this one here, if we go around I, J, K, L, so I'll note down an L. And it's very important that you're looking at the right side of the piece. So for this one, right, it's green on the top, which is very important, and then orange on the side. And so it goes to here because the green, not here because it's green on the top, and so we have to go to the green side of the edge. So make sure that you are looking at the right side of the piece. And now we will look at the sticker that is in that location and where that needs to go. So this one is the yellow, and then the green's on the other side. So that goes down here where it's yellow and then green on the other side. And so we note down the letter that's there, which would be U, because the first letter on the bottom is U, like we learned in the last step. So then we would have starting at our buffer, we'd go L and then U. And then we will look at what piece is in that location and where that needs to go. So this one is the blue and then orange on the side. So we go back here and it's blue and then orange on the side. So right here. And then we note down the letter that is. So we remembered in the last step that Q was the first letter of the back face, and so it goes Q, then R. So we note down the letter R. And then we look at what's at that, and it's red and then yellow. So we go to red and then yellow, okay? So it's the red side, so that's M, N, O. And so we note down that letter. And then we look at where that needs to go, and that has green and then red. So we look at the green side and then on the red. So it's right here, and that goes I and then J. So we note down that letter. And then you can probably guess, we look at where the piece that's there needs to go, and that's red and then blue. So we go here because red and then blue. So that's N because M, N. So now we have a string of letters that goes from our buffer to L, and then to U, and then back here to R, and then to O, and then to J, and then to N. So each position you trace to tells you where to trace to next, and as you go, you note down the letters. And you will end up building a string of letters that, if followed, will trace through the cube. And you stop tracing when you get back to the buffer location, so when you reach the piece that belongs here or here. And you don't include the letter for that. And so this means that for edges, you should never have the letters B or M, because when you get back to your buffer, you don't include the letter. If you're feeling a little bit lost or unsure, fear not. We will now cover an example to explain it further, and then give you a chance to have a go at edge tracing, and then see how you did before moving on to the next step. So this is the scramble for the example, and go ahead and apply it to your cube. If all of those letters are confusing to you, then you can watch this tutorial about cube notation and then come back to here. But if you do know cube notation, then scramble up your cube and then follow along while I explain how to trace edges. Alright, so this is the scramble, and to start off with, we look at our buffer piece, which is, remember, right here, so the top of this top right piece. And so we look at where this needs to go, and you see it has red on this side and blue on this side, so it needs to go to red and then blue, so right here. And then we note down the letter, and we know that the letters on the right side, it starts with M, so we can go M and then N, so we'll note down N. And then we look at the piece that's there and where that needs to go, and it's blue and then white, and so we'll look back on the back side, which is blue and then white, so it will be here. And so we learned in the previous step that that will be Q. So far we've noted down the letters N and then Q. And then the piece that's there has yellow and then green, and so we'll look down onto yellow and then green, so it's right, the edge that goes right here, which, as we learned in the previous step, is U. And so now we have, starting at a buffer, we have N and then Q and then U. And then we look at what piece is here, and it's yellow and orange, so we need to look yellow and then orange center here, so it will be right here, the yellow of this edge. And so we can go around remembering that U is the first letter on the bottom face. So U, V, W, and then X. Okay, so we note down that letter, and so now we have, from our buffer we go N, Q, U, and X. And then we look at what piece is there, and it goes red and then yellow. So we look over on the red and then yellow. So it's right here, this edge here. We go around M, N, O. So now we write down, we add in the O. And then the piece that's at O needs to go to orange and then white. So up to here, orange and then white. So right here, which, as we learned in the previous step, that'll be E. So we note down the letter E. And then the piece that's there is green and then white. So we go green and then white. So right here. And so, as we learned in the previous step, the first letter on the front face is I. So we note down the letter I. So far, we started our buffer, we go N here, and then Q, and then U, and then that goes to here, X, and that goes to here, which is O, and that goes to here, which is E, and that goes to here, which is I. Alright. And then we look at the piece that's there, and it has orange on the front and green on the top. So that means that we're gonna go orange and green. So E, F. So we note down the letter F. And then the piece that's there is green and red, and that goes to here, green and red. And so that we note down the letter I and J. So we note down the letter J. And then we look at the piece that's there, and that's orange and then blue. So that goes back to here at orange and blue. So right here is E, F, G, H. Okay, so we note down that letter. And then the piece that's there is white and then red. And so that goes back to white and then red. But that's our buffer piece, and so that means that we don't include that letter. So we'll just stop there after H. So then our full tracing ends up being, starting at our buffer, it goes to here, N, and then here at Q, and then down here to U, and then here to X, and then here to O, and here to E, and then that goes to here at I, and that goes to down here at F, and then that goes to here at J, which goes finally to here at H. Alright, so now that we've done an example together, it's time for you to give it a go by yourself. Give it a go tracing through the scrambles that I'm about to show, writing down the letters on a piece of paper or on a Word document or whatever as you go. When you think you've completed them, or if you get stuck, then you can unpause the video to see the solution. The scrambles and solutions for all of the practices will be in the description as well, so good luck. And there you go, practice complete. If you got anything wrong, then don't worry. I would recommend you do try and find where you went wrong, but if you can't find it, it's no biggie. We'll get to do more examples and practices that involve this as we learn the rest of the steps. And now that you know how to trace edges, we can now apply that same concept to tracing corners, which is the third step. Tracing corners is the exact same as tracing edges, but well, with corners instead. Your buffer will be back here, so the top sticker of this back left corner. And just like with edges, you look at what piece is there and where it needs to go. So this one is the red and blue and white, so it goes over on the red and blue and white, so right here. And then you note down what letter that is. So in this case it would be M, then N, so it would be, we'd note down the letter N. Then you look at the piece that's at that letter and look at where that needs to go. So in this case it's blue and orange and yellow, so we look back here, blue and orange and yellow, so right here, and that's QRS, so we would note down S. So then we have from our buffer to N to S, and then you look at where that needs to go, which is to here, and where that, and note down that letter and where that needs to go, and so on, just like edges. But I reckon that we're ready to go straight into an example, so apply this scramble to your cube and we'll go through one together. So we'll go ahead and get white on the top and green on the front, and we'll look back here at our buffer and the top sticker of our buffer. So that's the green of the red and yellow edge, okay? So it'll be on the green face with red and yellow. So it's gonna be I, J, K. So we'll note down the letter K. And then we look at what piece is there, and it's the blue of the red and white. So we'll look back here on the blue and red and white, and we learned in the first step that this was Q, so we note down that letter. So now we have our buffer to K and Q, and then we look at what's there, and it's the white of the orange and green, and so that needs to go to the white and orange and green, so right here, and that's the letter A, B, C, D, so we'll note down the letter D. And then that is yellow of the orange and green. So that's going to be on the bottom face here, the yellow, and it's going to be green and orange. So right here, which as we learned in the first step, the first letter on the bottom face is U. So that will be U. So we'll note down the letter U. And so we have our buffer to K, to Q, to D, to U, and then we look at what's there, and it's the white of the green and red. So again, it's going to be on the top with white and green and red. And so what letter is this? It's A, B, C. So so we'll note down the letter C. And then what's there? It's the yellow of the blue and red. And so that goes down here on the bottom face, because yellow of the blue and red. So right here. And so that is U, V, W. So we'll note down the letter W. And then what's that? It's white, orange, blue. So that goes up to here, white. Oh, that's our buffer. And so that means that we're finished tracing now, and we don't include the letter for our buffer, just like in edges. So we have from our buffer to K, Q, D, U, C, and then W. Easy as. Alright, so now that we've done that example together, I reckon it's time for you to have a practice at tracing the corners. I'll give you 3 scrambles, one at a time, and unpause the video when you think you are finished, or if you get stuck, to see the solutions. And again, the solutions will be down in the description too, so good luck.